What is up, guys? Dad Dash here, coming to you with another news article. And man, do I have a good article for you today. This one is going to blow your mind. We're going to be talking about a Instacart driver who took the company on and got $28,000. That's right, $28,000. That's not a typo, from the company using the arbitration clause. So this is going to tell you why, and I learned this earlier this year myself, that it is always in your best interest to understand your TOS, understand your rights, and to make sure you pursue things to the fullest. So without further ado, let's jump into this article because we got a lot to unpack here. And if you're new here, if this is the first time you're catching this stream, this is a new stream from Dad Dash Industries. And we are bringing you the latest and greatest national gig news articles from across the nation, across the globe, across the world. We're going to talk about all things gig official, things that from drivers to outside the YouTube sphere. We're going to bring it to you. We're going to break it down. We're going to talk about it. Right now, I'm doing these as live stream videos where it streams a pre-recorded video, but I am going to do some lives as well based around these articles. And start doing some studio-based lives to reach out to you guys, talk to you, talk about things, talk about topics, all things gig related, of course. Also, check out the latest and greatest stream. It's called Dad Dash Streams. It's the latest of innovative content coming from Dad Dash, and where I'm streaming content to you daily. And I'm restreaming old content. I'll hopefully be streaming content from other up and coming gig tubers, and with their permission, of course, and provided it meets community guidelines. But check it out, guys. It's streaming daily. We're going to have it up streaming daily. Hopefully, keep that out there for you guys that are working, need that extra motivation, need to see somebody out there also getting it done just like you in the trenches, working and driving right there with you. But anyways, let's jump in this exciting article today and let's get started. So here we go. All right. So the article today, guys, is titled Instacart Deactivated a Shopper and He Nearly Lost His Home. Wow. He battled the company and won $28,000 in back pay. That is not a typo, guys. That's $28,000. Now, as always, there's the bullet points. The 3 points of this article that we're going to be following is a former Instacart shopper fought the company over deactivation and won a $28,000 payout. The shopper used arbitration, which Instacart mandates for contractors who wants to challenge it. And the months-long process required hours of research, the shopper said. So let's get into this. Let's find out the details, because this to me is just extremely interesting. So let's get into it. And as always, guys, if you're not familiar with the way this works, I will be reading the content to you because I'm anticipating that if you're out there working like I do, you're probably out there working, probably out there driving and listening to content. So I'm going to assume that I'm going to read you the article so you don't have to take your eyes off the road or off your order screen, and you can hear exactly what we're talking about and breaking down. So let's get into it, guys, without further ado. All right. So Jason Villa had been an Instacart shopper for 2.5 years in July 2021 when the company deactivated his account. The reason? A Walmart self-checkout charged him for an extra item while he was ringing up an order, he said. Wow. That simple mix-up touched off a struggle that lasted over a year, left Villa broke, and nearly cost him his home, he said. But he fought back by exercising an option that most gig workers may not know they have. He went into arbitration and won a payout from Instacart of just over $28,000, according to a copy of the arbitrator's decision viewed by Insider. So I do want to let you guys know, first of all, every single gig app has an arbitration agreement, including DoorDash. DoorDash, it's right in the first few sections. It lays out that exists. But every single gig app has an arbitration clause. What is arbitration? If you're wondering, it's where they keep any issues or disputes out of the court system, and they bring in a third party paid for by the apps to listen to the dispute, listen to both sides, and then come to a resolution. And it severely limits what you can do. It limits who's going to be able to hear the case and how long a case can drag on when there's an issue. But in this case, this driver we're going to hear made this work for him. A lot of people complain about arbitration agreements. A lot of times arbitration agreements are used to silence individuals in a contractual situation. And it's meant to protect normally companies who have the money on their side. So let's back into the article there. I just wanted to give that little aside to you as we get in here. I've never run into anyone that's gone through the whole process, Via told Insider. The arbitration process can be complicated to navigate, and most gig workers don't have the resources to hire someone to guide them through it, he added. So again, I'm not certain how Instacart's is laid out. Normally, the cost of the arbitration is paid for by the company that is offering the arbitration agreement to the other side of the contract. But I guess they don't pay for someone to be there as counsel. I guess that's on you. And yes, that can be quite expensive if you got to hire a lawyer who's going to try to navigate you through that. However, normally, if an attorney sees value in your case, you wouldn't have to pay for it. But again, doesn't always mean in a gig situation that they're going to see value, because I don't think you see many drivers getting extremely large settlements like this gentleman got. But let's see how this goes. This is getting good. It's getting very interesting. We are living week to week, order to order, he said. Many workers say they struggle to earn money on Instacart, especially after the company cut base pay in July. Instacart confirmed that it deactivated Via and that his case was resolved by arbitration in October. It declined to comment on Via's arbitration proceedings or the final award, telling Insider that those details were confidential. Initially, now this is a little headline here, said initially Instacart didn't make it clear why it deactivated Via, he said. So this is a common thing we see, guys. This is common across all the apps. And one of the reasons why they don't want to make the deactivation reasons known is because once they do, they open themselves up to be accountable for showing they have proof. And because the contracts state that either side can walk away from each other at any time for any reason without having to disclose that, just like we can just stop working for them, they can stop dealing with us. And it's that very situation that makes it a little complicated for drivers who are depending on these apps, because they're like, well, what did I do wrong? But if they tell them what they did wrong, then the company itself, the platform, gets into the hairy situation of now being accountable for that decision. So most companies will just say, hey, you know what, we're just going to part ways. And we're going to activate the fact that we can part ways at any time, and you can part ways at any time. And that language exists in every single terms of service. So be aware of that. And this is something that is definitely becoming a bigger issue. It's becoming a bigger discussion point with all of these apps. Now let's get it back into the article. In the terms shoppers must accept before they start working, Instacart lays out reasons workers can be deactivated. Some examples are obvious, such as repeatedly delivering orders late. But Via's experience demonstrates that Instacart sometimes deactivates its contractors over much less. In an interview, Via said that the issue that led to his deactivation went back to the Walmart self-checkout kiosk he used 2 years ago. Before he arrived, another customer seemed to have scanned an $18 pack of cat food, then walked away with the item without paying, he said. When Via approached the register, the first customer was gone, but the item appeared on his receipt for that transaction, according to a photo of the receipt presented during the arbitration process and seen by Insider. Instacart notified Via about his deactivation by email the day after the Walmart order, but according to a series of messages Insider saw, but there wasn't much information in the email. He asked for details in a reply email, which Instacart interpreted as his appeal of the deactivation. I hadn't even appealed because I didn't even know what it was for, Via told Insider. So let's break this down, guys. So what happens is think about this now. You guys are in a rush. You've just gone through a long shop. You've got all these items in your cart. You're worried about getting those items scanned, bagged, delivered to the customer so you can move on to your next one, because time is money, right? And you missed that item. You missed that item having been already there. And you go forward, and that customer gets charged. So in this instance, I hear where this gentleman's coming from. It was a mistake, clearly. Somebody left an item on the register, but you've got to make sure, you've got to make sure that you are not going so fast that you miss these little things. It appears he did, because it ended up on the receipt. That's also very, very important. I check the receipt after every order, and make sure that the items that I scanned are the only items on that receipt. And I always make sure. So this is something I've actually been aware of, because I've encountered this before. And I'll move on to another register normally, because it's easier to do that, because normally you have to have a manager come in, override, get rid of the item. So if there's an open register nearby, I'll go to that register. Or what I like to do is I like to get checked out by a human being. I know a lot of people say, well, that takes up some time. For me, it's easier because I have another human who's making sure that the shopper cards are getting scanned, the taxes are not getting charged, etc., and making sure that things are going smoothly, that things are getting bagged correctly, and I'm able to, essentially have two sets of eyes on the bagging process and make sure everything gets scanned and done in an organized, well done fashion. So, those things need to be your top priority. I mean, remember, you're a business. You need to act like a business. This is key and very, very important. Let's talk about the other part here, where they didn't give him a reason. They were vague. I think this is something that's very, very common across all gig apps. Now, I question whether or not this will ever actually change, because I think once you start to change that, you start to change the relationship between the two parties. You cannot ask them to be accountable and to tell you something without you having to somehow indemnify them against the risk that they take by telling you the reason. So something's going to have to be given up. One of it, which is going to be your ability to challenge whatever it is they're saying in some regard. In other words, the reason why they're not is because it opens them up to legal liability. So rest assured, when you're trying to solve this issue, if they start to have to disclose the reasons why they're deactivating people, then they're not going to be held accountable necessarily legally for it in the same way that they would have under the current agreements that go out. Because traditionally, the way it works is if both parties have the ability to walk away from each other, then there's no need to give an actual reason. And in that case, neither party is accountable to the other. Neither party has defamed the other. Neither party has caused any type of disparagement to the other. And they just simply said, look, we're no longer doing business. In this case, it's going to be a little bit different, because they're going to have to state the reason. These apps are going to ask for protection against the legal liability. And at the same time, they're going to say, well, wait a minute, we are going to ask for a little bit on the other side of the dasher or the delivery driver, because now, you know what? They shouldn't be able to just walk away either and not have something attaching them to us. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out, but I really find it hard to see this issue, the activation issue of going away. What I think is going to happen, and I think what's been proposed that I understand, is they're going to have a third-party entity that's going to have to come in, that's going to be paid for by the dasher. So we're going to give up a little bit of money. We're going to fund that, and then they're going to come in, and then we're going to be bound by it. And the company is going to be indemnified against any type of legal action in regards to that decision. And the only thing that will happen is we're, there'll be a process laid out where the driver can challenge the decision. And if that's considered to be that the driver got his just due process, it's none. There's not going to be anything else. So I think, it's a tightrope walk of, do we end up better off or don't we with either process? But obviously, if we can get some transparency here, I think that's a good thing for drivers. If we can set up a process, that's a good thing for drivers. But it can go both ways. Anyways, let's get back into the article and start looking at this thing here. So only then did Instacart acknowledge that Via's deactivation was related to the Walmart order. But the message, which Insider reviewed, still didn't explain exactly why Via had been deactivated. The email said that the Walmart purchase was a questionable transaction and that he would no longer be able to claim orders through Instacart. We may not respond to further emails about this issue. The email sent from an account for Aureen Chaldhuri, but signed Annie T, said, "Thank you for your service." Wow. Again, I think it goes to the side of things where, if these are going to continue to be recognized as technology providers, right? If they're a technology platform that's providing technology for us to facilitate orders, and that they're also handling our marketing, they're also bringing us opportunities that they have gone ahead and negotiated on our behalf. If this is the relationship that remains, right, then it's going to be very difficult to step in and say, well, they don't have a right to decide, hey, I don't want to do business with this business anymore, this service provider, which is us, right? What I'm getting at is that we are going to, this ties in with giving up the independence, right? This is an issue that unfortunately we can't be true independent contractors if that's, and have that independence of the company by saying, well, this company has to tell us these things. Because the very nature of an independent contractor agreement is that we're not connected to each other except for purposes of each contract, and each of us have a chance and a right to walk away. So if we say, hey, they have a right, they don't have a right to deactivate us, they can say, well, they don't have a right then to turn down orders. We should have a right then to impose a acceptance rate amount. I mean, this is the slippery slope we get on, and you may not see the two to be together, but they are, because it is the very independence of being able to decline anything that we want without any ability for them to hold us accountable for that. That is the end. That is also fulfilled on their end of saying, well, we can choose to never send you another order again or allow you access to the platform, and we don't have to tell you why. We just tell you that there's been some things that have happened, and we are no longer going to be in business with you. So it's a slippery slope. It's definitely a slippery slope, and it's one that I'm sure will get worked out. But it's an issue. Put in the comments right now, if you're in chat right now. Put in the chat what it is that where you stand on this. How do you think? What's the best thing if you're watching this on a replay? Put in the comments. Same thing. And I should be in chat as this airs and gets streamed. It's not live to you right now, but still, I'll be in the chat to respond and talk with you and interact. So put it in there. I'd be curious to hear. I'd like to hear more people's thoughts on this and how you feel about it. So let's keep going here, guys. So in arbitration, Instacart unsuccessfully tried to argue that it could disregard the agreement that it asks shoppers to sign. Ooh, wow, really? VIA filed a request for arbitration in January 2022. The process differs from litigation in court in several ways. A court case tends to be public, with motions, rulings, and other documents visible to the parties and outside observers. Arbitration, by contrast, tends to be private and not visible to people other than the parties in the dispute. Disputes between Instacart and its contractors are settled by binding arbitration, meaning that neither side can appeal the decision according to Instacart's terms. Shoppers who want to go through arbitration also have to work with an arbitration firm that Instacart picks according to the terms. Once a shopper requests arbitration proceedings, they must wait 30 days to resolve the dispute before arbitration commences. Documents from the arbitration process show that Instacart argued that it had the option to remove VIA from its app, regardless of whether he had violated Instacart's independent contractor agreement. One of Instacart's arguments was that the Walmart purchase had violated Instacart's contract with VIA, according to a motion filed by Instacart in July 2022. Instacart's agreements cite fraudulent conduct as a reason for terminating shoppers, but the arbiter said VIA wasn't aware of the extra item until the following day when Instacart deactivated his account. Thus, the arbitrator wrote, VIA did not engage in or encourage fraudulent conduct that might violate his agreement with Instacart. Almost a year after VIA's arbitration case was resolved, Instacart told Insider that it deactivated VIA because the company could find no evidence to suggest that the transaction was not fraudulent. All right, guys, let's unpack this. There's a lot here. There's a lot here to get into, and we're going to take it from the top. So, documents from the arbitration process showed that Instacart had the option to remove VIA from its app, regardless of whether it had violated Instacart's independent contractor agreement. Now, see, that's where we're talking about the voluntary separation, where they say, hey, we can decide not to do business with you for any reason we want. Now, this is kind of scary when you think about it, because what they're basically saying here is that for all practical purposes, we're having you sign a TOS, we're having you sign a terms of service, we're having you sign a code of conduct, we're having you say these are the things that you're not supposed to do, these are the things you can do. You can do it all right, and we can say, hey, sorry, we're done. So I think that's a little bit concerning. But I think this is also why every driver needs to be aware that you do have an arbitration process that you can go through, to which you can make sure that things are being fairly done. Now, my reading is that there can be a separation, right, at any time. But in terms of a separation from use of platform, but I think that, I think legally, I can see where Instacart's coming from. I don't think it's fair. I don't like it. But I think legally they can do it. But I also think that it kind of says with them, why would you have a code of conduct? Why would you have a TOS? Why would you have standards to work towards? If but I think it's also good that you can invoke an arbitration process and get into exactly what went on, and force Instacart, because see, once Instacart starts talking about the reason, puts it on a different level or a different playing field. So I guess the issue here is, I guess the arbiter said they had to talk about it was, do they have to even tell you or talk about this at any level at any point? And I guess in arbitration they do. So, the next state, it says that Instacart, that they said that the purchase had violated Instacart's contract. I don't necessarily agree with that, but the arbiter said VIA wasn't aware of the item. So I guess that was important. I guess the arbiter found, after reviewing everything, that he wasn't aware. It wasn't a situation where he just ignored this or said, "Hey, I'm not going to worry about I'm not going to worry about the extra item. No big deal. Heck with it." And just was moving fast and just said, forget about it. I guess based on it, we have to take it at face value that This gentleman did not know what happened, and the next day, I guess, found out about it, and Instacart said, again, this is interesting because the statement that Instacart made here is they went forward with deactivation because they could find no evidence to suggest that the transaction was not fraudulent. That is a fancy way of saying you are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. So you need to understand that. And this goes exactly to what I've preached on this channel, and I've showed you videos. I showed you back in June when I was out, and I had all the problems with a couple of orders that were reported not delivered on DoorDash, body cams, dash cams, phone cams. Document, document, document. It is absolutely imperative that you are anticipating, and you are anticipating that you are going to be accused when you are accused, not that you're going to be accused, but when you are accused, you are going to have the onus on you to prove yourself innocent. That if you don't have evidence that you didn't do what they said you did, here it is, because I doubt DoorDash thinks different. If they can't find evidence to the contrary, normally it would be, well, if we can't find evidence to support this, we're going to assume it didn't happen. No, they take the approach that customer's always right. If there isn't evidence to the contrary, then it happened. Think how many times we've heard people getting deactivated on DoorDash. Think across the line, all the deactivation stories you've heard. And then think about the fact that, hey, many have said, wait a minute, there isn't even really much evidence for this. This is just a customer. And they went forward with deactivation anyways. So look, it's on you. Take the steps that you need to take to make sure you're protected. It's your business, it's your livelihood, it's your money that you're making. Let's jump back in and get this story finished here. At the time of the arbitration hearing, representatives for Instacart also argued that the company could terminate the independent contractor agreement for any reason or no reason. According to a pre-hearing brief seen by Insider, I want that to sink in, that they could terminate the independent contractor agreement for any reason or no reason. The arbiter disagreed with Instacart's assessment. Now, guys, this is a case, let's talk about this here before we move on. I'm trying to move through this. I know it's a lot to unpack, but this article is so valuable to every driver because anytime legal proceedings occur, there's precedents that get set. This case has established a precedence for how to interpret independent contractor agreements going forward. And what we're about to get into here is the arbiter's findings, which is now going to be a way that let's say you get into this situation, you would want to find this case, find out all the public information that you have, find out if you can get the order that was put out by the arbiter, and say, hey, wait a minute, if any other company attempts to raise this issue and say, wait a minute, we can terminate you for any reason or no reason at all, you can say, well, wait a minute, there's a case where that was already dealt with and they said no, and they laid out the terms by which deactivation can occur. So I want you to think of it in those ways when you start to get into this. So let's get into this, guys. This is going to get really, really interesting, really, really fast, I think. So let's dig into this. It bears note that there is no provision to that effect in the ICA, that is Independent Contractor Agreement. Glitch Dash, I'm talking to you. He said in the final award document referring to the Independent Contractor Agreement, Instacart's agreement for contractors purports to require both parties to perform certain obligations and grants them certain rights, the arbiter said, adding, but respondent now argues that these rights and obligations are illusory because the instrument is voidable at any time by operation of a mutual right arbitrarily to terminate. Again, I'm just going to stop for a second and note on what they're saying here. If this isn't the greatest example of how innately corrupt these companies can be, they literally have a well-crafted legal document to which they have said it applies to you while you're working. You have to follow every bit of this. We can do whatever we want, and however we see fit. That's crazy. And again, that's where there's friction here in this whole process, as we talked about in regards to saying, well, you've got an independent contractor agreement that's kind of an at-will agreement, meaning either party can walk away from it at any time. I guess that puts everybody in a really difficult situation, because it's like, if you're going to go through, this is where I come in and say, listen, we have to, I think what it comes down to is, if these companies want that, right? If they want the ability to walk away on their end, and they want us the ability to walk away on our end, then they have to step back for a second and say, wait a minute, we have no governance over how you work. We provide you with the opportunity. We provide you with the information. You do all the work. The customer, meaning the merchant, the customer, meaning the person getting the food, lays out the conditions that they want this done under, and we will provide the technology to assess how that happens. Really, what should be happening is all three should be doing a rating: the merchant, the customer, the driver. And if these companies were really doing this correctly, they would be utilizing that rating system to see how great of a fit that transaction was, and assess whether or not we should be bringing those three parties together again. And the driver should be working to impress both of those people, not the apps themselves. And the apps themselves should not be in the business of saying, well, we're not going to provide opportunities to this person or this person. That should be determined by the merchant. The merchant should have the right to say, I'm not dealing with that driver. The customer should have the right to say, I'm not dealing with that driver. And then the driver essentially destroys their own market if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I think what you really have here, the real nuts and bolts of this issue is should these apps even have the right to tell us any of this at all? And the answer to that is truly not, because they are not an employer. They are a technology provider, an opportunity provider, and they really have no business telling us how to do our job, telling us what we should take or not take. Their only job is marketing to us and saying, hey, look, let me show you this order and make it as attractive to the driver as possible so that we will take it, deliver it. They get paid all their fees, and they don't just get they don't just get paid fees by the driver, but they get paid by the restaurant and the customer itself. So I think that's really where we come to on this. That's the conclusion we have to draw to is if you're going to do this correctly, if you're going to completely reformat these relationships, it doesn't start with taking a process that shouldn't be there. It starts saying, let's enforce the contract as it's stated. And let's tell these apps, you want us to be independent contractors. You don't want to be an employer. You want to be a technology provider. Then you get treated like that. And we get treated like we're a driver in a business. And the restaurants are treated like they're a restaurant. And the customers treated like they're a customer. And the apps stay in their lane, essentially. And I think that is how this thing gets solved. But we have to have that conversation. And we have to be willing as drivers to speak to that. Anyways, let's get back to this article. Instacart's agreement for contractors purports to require both parties to perform certain obligations and grants them certain rights, the arbiter said. But respondent now argues that these rights and obligations are illusory because the instrument is voidable at any time by operation of a mutual right arbitrarily to terminate. Via spent months in arbitration before winning an award in his favor. In October, 15 months after the deactivation email, the arbiter issued a cash award to Via. The $28,000 figure was an estimate of how much income he had lost since he had been deactivated on Instacart the previous summer. That loss of income put Via's house in Los Angeles on the road to foreclosure. Insider reviewed a foreclosure notice from Via's bank. He and his wife were able to avoid losing the property by renting it out to college students and moving to Washington to live with his in-laws, he said. That's where they live today, he told Insider. It's still a matter of catching things up. The mortgage fell behind. Everything fell behind. Villa also spent hours doing legal research and crafting responses to arguments that Instacart's representatives used in arbitration. He said he never went to law school, but that knowledge from a prior job evaluating contracts for a health insurance company came in handy as he parsed Instacart's contract for shoppers. I can read it and figure out what makes sense and what I can argue and what doesn't make sense. While the arbitration process is time-consuming, he spoke with Insider to let other shoppers know it's an option. At least when you get fired from a job, you can get unemployment and you got something coming in, Villa said. You get deactivated from Instacart or one of these gig companies and you're just cut off completely. There's no security or anything because you're not employed. You're just an independent contractor. Do you work for Instacart, DoorDash, Uber Eats, or another delivery service and have a story to share? Reach out to this reporter, abitter@insider.com. So there you have it, guys. That's the article. So reach out. Listen, if you have any stories, reach out to abitter@insider. Share your story. Share your journey. Share whatever it is that's on your mind that you think the world should know. They're doing a good job over there. But listen, this is crazy, guys. I mean, when you think about it, he got $28,000. So this tells you right now, you see Dad Dash put a video up, talk to you about TOS, tell you to know it. People out there you might talk to, other drivers might tell you, well, don't worry about it. Don't put that time and effort in. Don't try to understand things. You know what? Those are the people that are going to get deactivated. They're going to walk away. They're going to have no clue what to do. They're going to cry. They're going to get upset, and they're going to end up becoming financially destitute. Now, this gentleman still became financially destitute. This gentleman still got financially hurt, but he got justice. He got $28,000 worth of justice, which is now helping him get his home out of foreclosure and helping him turn the lights back on, so to speak, and get things rolling again. Doesn't return Instacart to him, doesn't get him back to work for Instacart, but it's certainly helped. I don't know if it did not say in there if he was reactivated or not. I don't know. I'm assuming Instacart probably didn't reactivate him, but if they did, I think that would be the fair thing to do. But it didn't sound like they're interested in doing that. But guys, look, this is why it's important for you to understand these agreements, for you to understand your rights, for you to understand what it is you're doing, what your expectations are on both sides of the contract, what you're expecting from the platforms, what you're expecting from yourself, what you should be expecting from merchants and customers. Because it's very, very important that if you run into problems, that you have the knowledge and the ability to deal with these things, to know that you can trigger arbitration. I mean, did you know this, that in every single DoorDash contract, an arbitration clause exists? You can trigger arbitration anytime you're deactivated. Okay. And you can begin the process of peeling away the onion and seeing, hey, what exactly is going on here? Now, it may prevent you from ever going back and working for DoorDash again in the future. But in this case, this gentleman got $28,000. Didn't state whether he's back active on the platform or not. I don't know. I'd love to find out. But if you could get $28,000 and get reimbursed for lost wages and income for a wrongful deactivation, hey, that's a good thing. It's not great that he lost that income, but it's fantastic that he was able to get it back. One side of me would think he might be back because if they're giving him back income, it tells him he should have been working for him in the first place. Therefore, he was probably given access again to the apps, but who knows? I'm sure he's moved on. I'm sure he's got other things he wants to do besides work for a company that put him through that for months. But guys, listen, cannot stress this enough. Make sure you understand, make sure you're taking care of your business. And it stretches to not even just with TOSs. This is the whole premise of understanding your numbers. Some people say, hey, Dad Dash, you're making things complicated when you suggest people need these things. No, you're not. No, it's not complicated. That's the whole point. The numbers you're collecting are not complicated. You're collecting this information as you work, and then you're providing yourself with the insight to be able to make profitable decisions. And you will gain, you will benefit, you will end up better off than others. And you will end up being able to make this a long-term endeavor that will allow you to make money in the long term. You will be able to understand things that other drivers won't. And you will be at home sooner. You will be at your financial goals sooner. And you will be in an overall better place if you just keep yourself as informed as you can be, and take all steps to do that. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's live. I hope you interacted in the chat. I hope that you leave me a comment if you're watching this on the restream. Like I said, we're going to take these things and make these things real lives here in the near future. I'll come up and cover some articles, get some feedback, try to interact with you. But in the meantime, I'm going to keep streaming this up. This is a new thing I'm doing. Talk about things. I think when you talk about things in the framework of a news article, and it really helps to give you something to break down and get your thoughts rolling. So please put in the comments, put in the chat comments what your thoughts are on this $28,000 win for the driver. Do you think it's a win? Do you think he should have got $28,000? Who was in the right? Was Instacart in the right? Was the driver in the right? Was it somewhere in between? Leave all that in the comments and let me know, guys. And in the meantime, guys, stay safe, stay profitable. And as always, guys, Dad Dash will talk to you soon. Have a good evening, afternoon, morning, whenever this airs.